think about it in terms of what the light rays are doing. The direction of the light produce the light rays. The light rays are the same strength as they're coming down.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay.
But it's how the planes are turned from them that determine the strength of the ray that can hit it.
Without a light source, we would see nothing. Everything would be in stark darkness. But any light source is going to allow us to see. Oddly, the kind of light source or the direction of that light source is going to determine how images appear in our eyesight. Claude Monet shows us how these haystacks appear to his eye in direct sunlight. But under an overcast sky, where the light is spread everywhere, images appear totally different than those same images would appear in direct sunlight. Stanhope Forbes has shown us that here. He's also shown us in this painting what window light does, the way window light affects an image. Much different from the overcast light, and much different from what we see in candlelight, how candlelight defines the image in a much different way than direct sunlight or window light or overcast light, much like a firelight does. So our task as artists is to discern what kind of light is illuminating the image, where is that light located, and what is the light actually doing to the image itself. This study won't give us time to study all the light sources, but when we can learn how to study a single light source, then we'll know how to study all other light sources. So for this study, we're going to focus our attention on what happens in direct sunlight and what happens in indirect or overcast light. Now to do this, let's learn the hierarchy of light. Let's learn what light actually does. So here it is, all outlined for you. We learned this, we've got the whole story. The primary light source is where everything begins. That primary light source will cause a secondary and a tertiary resulting light source. But in order to recognize that, it's necessary to locate the light source. And when we locate the light source, we will notice that the rays from that source are coming at distinct angles. The direction of those angles are what causes shapes of values to form on images themselves. Those shapes of values are either in the realm of light, where the light rays are hitting, or they're in the realm of shadow, where the light rays are missing. So surfaces hit by the angles of the rays are where the light rays are hitting. Surfaces not hit by the light rays are what we call shadow. Now here's your big clue. The resulting values and the resulting colors are determined by how those light rays are either hitting or missing any place on any image. A lot of people think that it's the local color that causes those values. Local color plays a small part in it, but it's the strength and direction of the light source that causes all those colors and values to appear the way they do. Here the light is shining behind and above this pepper. You notice that it's above the pepper because you can see a little bit of the edge, and you know it's behind because the cast shadow's in front. Now it's gradually moving to still behind, but then to the left. You know that by the way the cast shadow is slanted. That's the angle of light I was talking about. The angle of the light determines the shapes of the shadows and the shapes of the lights themselves. As the light moves then further to the left of the pepper, notice that the cast shadow moves further to the right. And notice how the shapes of those lights begin to change as that light begins to change. As the position, the location of the light changes, notice how the shapes of the lights change. You just focus on one, it would focus on either just the shapes of light or the shapes of shadow. But you'll notice that the change takes place when the angle and the location of the light changes. Now the light is slightly behind and above, but it's still not directly over the subject. Look at the shape of light on the subject. Look at the shape of the shadow. Now watch how that shape is going to change gradually as the position of the light changes. The position of the light doesn't change that much, but if you'll notice, there is a definite change in the actual shape of light and the actual shape of shadow, including the cast shadow. The cast shadow is very much part of the form shadow. Now look at the difference in those shapes when the light moves to the upper right, throwing the cast shadow to the left, and give us another shape of light, a totally different shape of light. Now when we change the position of the light again, we see that shape of light change to a stronger light at the top and a more distinct shadow around the frontal edges and the cast shadow at the bottom. Now brace yourself. Here's the same pepper in diffuse light, overcast light. The overcast light, look, there's hardly any cast shadow visible there at all. Notice that all the light's coming from the top. This is what happens in the diffuse light. In the overcast light, the position of the light doesn't change. It's always above because it's the entire sky that is our light source. So when the sky is overcast, we may not see cast shadow, or we may see just a degree of cast shadow depending on how thick those overcast clouds are. But the source itself is going to stay in the same position. Now let's look at what causes all this. Now the light rays coming directly, well first of all let's look at the pattern of what happens here. There it is. Now notice, this represents the light rays as they would be coming directly from the sun. Notice how straight the ray is and how they pass and hit these areas that we see as lit. And notice right here at the edge where we see the areas going into shadow, they can't hit. They miss the areas going into shadow. Even small areas like these little areas, they're falling into shadow. These little areas are falling into shadow. The planes of shapes that are more directly in line with the direction of the light rays will capture more light. As those planes, look right here, this is a good example. This plane right here, right in there, you notice this is the lightest part, right in there where the light is hitting it directly. Then as this plane or this shape moves in planes away, bends away, it gets a little bit darker in value, even though it's still in light. That's what we call low light, or we also call it halftones where this is happening. At the point where the light ray passes over, like you can see right here, it passes over, the plane turns and goes down, so the light ray can no longer hit it. That's where we see shadow. We will always see shadow there, because the light, even though there might be some areas of shadow that are lighter than others, the direct light ray is not hitting it. Now what is causing this right here? Down here we see reflected light. The light ray comes down, bounces back, and hits within the shadow area. It hits other places too, but we can't see it because the brilliance of the light on this side is blocking our being able to see any bounce or reflected light going back onto it. So these little lighter areas that we will most likely see in most shadows, sometimes they'll be lighter and they'll pick up color from the area, but those are caused because that third or that tertiary light ray is bouncing from the surface back on to the shadow area. And it will bounce back into the cast shadow too. Secondary light rays we don't see really in this one because the secondary light rays come from the sky itself. So with the sun lighting the entire sky then is reflecting down on whatever is under the sky. But those rays are very, very weak. But that's often we can see those when we're in the outdoors. We can see those in the shadows themselves. Now, let me show you a notan of this so that you can see this the whole business of how the light rays hit and how they miss. See this in this notan example right here. Now, this is why I love the notan so much, because it helps us to separate those areas where light is hitting, where light rays are striking, and the areas that are totally being missed by the light rays, either being blocked. The cast shadow is the pepper blocking the rays, causing the pepper to form its little shape right here. But you can see even in this area, it doesn't the notan doesn't distinguish the degrees of the light rays here. It just simply shows us where the light is striking, and then this doesn't distinguish between the kinds of shadows. Let's go back to the pepper itself. We can see even in the shadow areas, there's some shadow areas that are lighter and some shadow areas that are deeper and darker. That's because as the light flows down, there's a certain amount of the ambient light reflecting back into the shadow. But the notan doesn't show us that difference. It doesn't show us the degree in the value. It simply shows us where the light rays are striking. Put it back up. It shows us where the light rays are striking and where they're not able to strike. Now, that principle holds true no matter where the location of the light source. What changes is the shape of light and the shape of shadow, determined by the angle of the light source. And as the light source might get lower down, the degree of value and color will change. And now you can see why it's so important to know the hierarchy of light. This course is called Conveying the Light Source, and that means that we learn by the way we use the hierarchy of light, we learn to show in our paintings the primary light source. We might not show it exactly, but the paintings will show where it's coming from, at what angle, and what kind of light source it is. The secondary and the tertiary resulting light sources. But the big thing there is the location of that primary light source and how it creates angles because of the angles of the light rays. It creates the actual shapes of light and the actual shapes of shadow that we show in our paintings. And it also, where it's located, how those light rays hit the surfaces will determine the resulting values and the resulting colors in both the light and the shadow.
Play that game with yourself. You can play it with a flashlight. If you have a nice strong flashlight, just go around shining that flashlight on stuff, and you'll notice of course, the flashlight is built for its beams to go out like that. But if you got a little focus light and you shine a beam, get right up close to it, which would be kind of similar to the distance of the sun from where we are. Not the same, but anyway, the closer the light to it, you'll notice that white light will be hitting where it's absolutely perpendicular. It bleaches the color out.
Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianeMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.